Imagine this. You're in a relationship, romantic, a friendship, maybe even with a coworker. Things feel off. You remember something happening a certain way, but they tell you it didn't happen like that. You get upset, and suddenly you're the problem. You're too sensitive. You're overreacting. You're crazy. And the worst part? After a while, you start to believe them. That's gaslighting, and it's one of the most psychologically devastating forms of manipulation known to science. Today, we're going to break it all down. What gaslighting actually is, the psychology behind why it works, and most importantly, how to spot it before it destroys you. Welcome to the Psyche Vault. The term gaslighting comes from a 1944 film called Gaslight, directed by George Cukor. In the film, a manipulative husband slowly tries to drive his wife insane. He dims the gas-powered lights in their home, and when she notices, he tells her she's imagining it. He hides objects, then accuses her of losing them. He isolates her from friends, all to make her question her own sanity, so he can control her. The film became a cultural landmark, and the term gaslighting entered psychology as a way to describe this specific pattern of psychological manipulation. But here's what's fascinating, and what most people miss. Gaslighting isn't just something that happens in dramatic movie plots. It happens in everyday life, in ordinary relationships, and often so subtly that the victim has no idea it's happening. To understand why gaslighting is so effective, we need to understand how memory works, because memory is far less reliable than we think. Psychologists call this memory malleability. Every time you recall a memory, you're not playing back a video recording. You're actually reconstructing it, and that reconstruction can be influenced by what people tell you, what you want to believe, and repeated suggestions. Famous psychologist Elizabeth Loftus proved this in her landmark studies. Simply asking someone a leading question after an event could alter what they remembered about it. This is the scientific foundation that makes gaslighting possible. Now, combine that with something called cognitive dissonance, the psychological discomfort we feel when our beliefs conflict with reality. When someone we love and trust tells us our reality is wrong, our brain experiences a kind of internal war. And often, the easier path is to give in, to trust the other person, than to hold on to a version of reality that's causing us conflict. Gaslighters exploit exactly this. They use our natural tendency to trust, our malleable memory, and our desire for emotional harmony, and they weaponize it against us.
Tactic number 1, flat-out denial. That never happened. I never said that. The gaslighter flatly refuses to acknowledge reality, even when the victim has proof. Over time, the constant denial erodes the victim's trust in their own perception. Tactic number 2, trivializing. You're being way too sensitive. You always overreact. This tactic makes the victim feel like their emotional responses are abnormal or unreasonable, shutting down legitimate feelings before they can be processed. Tactic number 3, diversion and deflection. Whenever the victim tries to raise an issue, the gaslighter changes the subject, brings up unrelated past grievances, or questions the victim's motives. The real problem is never addressed. Tactic number 4, countering. Your memory is terrible. You always get things wrong. The gaslighter directly attacks the victim's ability to remember events accurately, planting seeds of self-doubt that grow over time. Tactic number 5, recruiting others. In more extreme cases, the gaslighter enlists other people, friends, family, even colleagues, to back up their version of events. This is sometimes called flying monkeys in psychology. The victim now feels isolated. Everyone else seems to agree with the manipulator. Now let's get practical. Here are 7 warning signs that you might be experiencing gaslighting right now. 1. You constantly second-guess yourself. Even on decisions you'd normally feel confident about, you find yourself paralyzed, wondering if your judgment can be trusted. 2. You feel confused and crazy, often. Not just occasionally, regularly. You feel like you're losing your grip on reality after interactions with this person. 3. You make excuses for your partner or friend's behavior. You find yourself defending their actions to others, even when deep down something feels wrong. 4. You feel like everything is your fault. Somehow every argument ends with you apologizing, even when you weren't the one who started it. 5. You're walking on eggshells. You carefully monitor your words and actions around this person to avoid setting them off, always bracing for the next conflict. 6. You feel like you used to be more confident. Friends and family have noticed you seem different, quieter, more withdrawn, less like yourself. 7. You feel hopeless and joyless, but can't explain why.
Not everyone who gaslights is a calculating supervillain. Some do it consciously, deliberately using these tactics to maintain power and control. But research suggests many gaslighters operate partly unconsciously, using manipulation as a learned defense mechanism. Gaslighting is most common in individuals with narcissistic personality traits, people who have an extreme need for control and an inability to tolerate being wrong. It also appears frequently in those with high Machiavellian tendencies, people who view relationships primarily as tools for personal gain. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Gaslighting can happen in any relationship, with romantic partners, parents, siblings, bosses, and friends. And it can happen to anyone, regardless of how intelligent or self-aware you are. In fact, studies suggest that highly empathetic people are often more vulnerable because they're more willing to question themselves and see things from another perspective. So, what do you do if you recognize these signs? Here are 4 concrete steps. Step 1. Keep a record. Start a private journal or notes app. Write down events, conversations, and how they made you feel right after they happen. This gives you an anchor to reality that can't be rewritten. Step 2. Trust your feelings. Your emotions are data. If something feels wrong, if you consistently feel anxious, confused, or diminished around someone, that is information worth taking seriously. Step 3. Reconnect with your support network. Gaslighters often try to isolate their victims. Actively maintain relationships outside the dynamic. Talk to people who knew you before. They can often see the changes more clearly than you can. Step 4. Seek professional support. Gaslighting causes real psychological harm. Anxiety, depression, PTSD. A therapist trained in narcissistic abuse can help you rebuild your sense of reality and self-worth. This is not weakness. This is strategy.
Gaslighting is one of the most insidious forms of psychological manipulation, precisely because it attacks the very thing you use to defend yourself, your own mind. But knowledge is armor. Now that you know what gaslighting looks like, how it works, and why it's so effective, you're significantly harder to gaslight. You have the map. You know the terrain. If you found this video valuable, subscribe to the Psyche Vault. We go deep into the science of dark psychology, manipulation, and the hidden patterns that shape human behavior every week.